The world of Islam found its way to India in the 7th century. However, some of the most influential and fundamental changes within the country came through the rule of the Muslim Mughal Empire. Founded in the 1500s by a descendant of both Timur and Genghis Khan, the Mughal Empire was of Turkic-Mongol origin and arose initially from Central Asia. Although Babur, the dynasty's founder, only ruled as emperor for roughly 4 years from 1526 until 1530, he was a prominent military genius who had mastered the art of leadership and undeniably launched an empire. Babur's first conquest into India began in the Delhi Sultanate-controlled region of Punjab. Ibrahim of the Lodi dynasty was the current sultan at the time and managed to stave off enough of Babur's repeated attempts to overpower his authority until the spring of 1526 at the First Battle of Panipat. The forces of the determined Timurid conqueror, numbering no more than 15,000 with limited field artillery, met for a final decisive battle with tens of thousands and 100 elephant-strong Delhi army. While Babur and his men were vastly outnumbered, they were a skilled and seasoned group and had received artillery aid from the Turks of the Ottoman Empire. On the other hand, the troops of Sultan Ibrahim utilized outdated and fundamentally inferior strategies, begetting their ultimate demise of the Sultan himself. Wasting no time, Babur swiftly seized Delhi only 3 days after his victory in Panipat, now styling himself as the Emperor of India. Backed by his eldest son Humayun, the new emperor next captured Agra as the genesis of the Mughal Empire began to rapidly shift into consolidation. This, of course, was absurdly far from easy, as Babur and his men were all but surrounded by his adversaries. Still undersized, hundreds of miles from their base at Kabul, and tormented by poor weather conditions, the Mughal soldiers were ready to head back home. Steadfast, Babur chose to continue his takeover, reinvigorating his men through a combination of threats and promises, according to his own memoir. Turning first towards the imminent threat coming out of Rajputana, clashed with the forces of Rana Sanga of Mewar, who led a powerful Rajput confederacy. On March 16, 1527, Babur employed the tactics previously used at Panipat to gain another key victory. One of these highly successful strategies included the utilization of carts to easily create a wall that would protect his cannon, allowing them to be operated without fear of a retaliatory strike. This, along with a method called tulugma, in which the troops were divided into forward left, forward right, rear right, and center units, led the Mughals to triumph at the Battle of Kanwa in a mere 10 hours. Briskly moving on to the next opponent, Babur shifted focus to the Afghan chiefs who had captured the city of Lucknow during his conflict with Rana Sanga. Seizing the fortress of Chanderi along the way, the Mughal Empire was able to oust the captures of Lucknow before taking on Mahmud Lodi, a brother of the late Ibrahim who had gained Afghan support. At the Battle of Gagra, Babur's army found victory yet again, this time vanquishing the forces of both the Eastern Afghan Confederates and the Sultanate of Bengal in the late spring of 1529, consequently annexing Bihar, which had been occupied by Mahmud Lodi. The Mughal Empire had now spread through much of northern India in only a few short years. Following Babur's death in 1530, the newly established power continued to expand and develop. Humayun, Babur's successor, had some temporary complications in 1540 when he was deposed by the Afghan ruler Sher Shah Suri, but was eventually able to regain his leadership role in 1555 after defeating Sher Shah's successor. Unfortunately, he died the following year, leaving the next phase of Mughal advancements in the hands of his 13-year-old heir, Akbar. From 1556 through 1605, Akbar prompted a variety of major changes within the empire. The new emperor also fortified the internal structure of his sovereignty, creating a distinguished mansabdari system, which would go on to become the foundation of the Mughal military and civil administration. Akbar also enforced policies of religious tolerance that remained intact throughout the reign of the next two emperors. During this time, first under the rule of Emperor Jahangir and then led by Shah Jahan, liberal policies in favor of non-Muslims within the region were only a portion of the significant furtherances of the Mughal Empire. Conquest throughout India continued, now gaining hold of cities such as Kangra, Kitwar, Kandahar, and more territories toward the south. The architectural impact of the empire began to grow through the building of Persian-style influenced gardens and extravagant structures such as the Red Fort and Taj Mahal, even earning Shah Jahan the sobriquet of Architect King. Existing at its peak and marked by great peace and prosperity, the only notable complication during the Mughal Empire from 1605 until 1658 manifested as heightened tensions with the Sikhs after Arjan Dev, a Sikh guru, was executed by order of Emperor Jahangir. The Mughal leader aimed only to punish the deed of providing support to his rebellious brother Khusru, but the relationship between the Muslim authority and Sikhs still suffered, despite the emperor's desire to maintain a fully magnanimous society. Nonetheless, the Mughal Empire maintained its unprejudiced stance until the reign of Emperor Aurangzeb, who took the throne in 1658 and launched a disastrously bigoted movement against all those of non-Muslim faith. The mildest of offenses was the reinstatement of jizya, or taxes on non-Muslim subjects. Aurangzeb also initiated an unprecedented series of campaigns against those he deemed to be infidels. Hindus were forcibly converted to Islam, and temples were destroyed, with mosques often being built on top of their ruined foundations. Apparently still seeking stronger action, it is said that in 1669, the emperor commanded all of his governors to destroy with a willing hand the schools and temples of the infidels, and to put a stop to the teaching and practice of idolatrous forms of worship. Although these claims are commonly disputed in present day, with many pointing to the assertion that the emperor actually protected more Hindu temples than he destroyed. Regardless, the Mughal Empire's area of hegemony reached its peak under the reign of Aurangzeb, although the overall power and constitution of the Muslim dynastic power began to crumble around the time of his death in 1707. Taking over the collapsing empire, Bahadur Shah I ruled only for 5 years, having already been in his 60s when he ascended to the throne. The period of 1707 through 1712 was marked by continuous religious intolerance and furthering instability forming within the empire, including multiple rebellions that needed to be subdued. The fractious environment under the Mughal authority persisted, reaching a novel peak during the rule of the 12th Emperor Muhammad Shah between 1719 to 1748, at which point Nader Shah of Iran orchestrated a stunning sack of Delhi after his victory against Muhammad Shah at the Battle of Karnal in a curt 3-hour conflict. With the empire having already been bombarded continuously by revolts and strife against rivals such as the Marathas, the damaging acts of Nader Shah seemed to accelerate the irreversible fall of the once remarkably potent dynasty. After Muhammad Shah's death, it wasn't long before the Marathas gained almost total dominion over northern India. The Mughal Empire was now reduced to a small territory near Delhi, although even that trivial dominion was taken under the command of the Marathas in 1785. That remains the case until the Third Anglo-Maratha War in 1818, shifting power into the hands of the British East India Company, which in turn became the protectors of the Mughal dynasty. However, with the Indian Rebellion of 1857 against the British, Bahadur Shah II, the last Mughal emperor, sealed the fate of both himself and the dynasty as a whole. After his involvement with the Sepoy Mutiny, the vulnerable monarch was put on trial and charged on 4 counts, which included aiding and abetting the mutinies of the troops, encouraging and assisting some persons in waging waging war against the British government, assuming the sovereignty of Hindustan, and causing and being accessory to the murder of a Christian. As a result, Bahadur Shah II was exiled to Rangoon, Burma, along with his wife and other members of his family. Falling ill in October, Bahadur Shah II died in November of 1862 at the age of 87. With him, the Mughal Empire came to a close. In modern day, there are about 200 million Muslims in India, rounding out to around 14% of the total population. In comparison, the Hindu population of the country comes in just under 80%, albeit the number of Hindus vastly outweighs those who follow Islam within the Indian people, but there is still a lasting effect from the Muslim conquering in the region. While the religion was introduced centuries prior, the time of the Mughal Empire both grew and spread its beliefs at exponential rates. Had the Turkic-Mongol leaders failed to find success in their conquests or neglected to make an attempted expansion in the first place, the presence of Islam in India would likely be tremendously lower than it is today.